Welcome to the Deep Dives, the show where we take a stack of your sources, distill the most important nuggets of knowledge, and give you a shortcut to being truly well-informed.
Uh-huh.
Today, we're diving headfirst into a challenge that, let's be honest, probably keeps a lot of us up at night. How do you strategically navigate a business world that feels less like a steady river and more like, well, a chaotic, constantly shifting sea?
Mm-hmm.
The
Yeah.
sheer volume of information, the relentless pace of change, the feeling that what worked yesterday might be utterly useless tomorrow. It's a lot, right?
It absolutely is. For decades, the prevailing wisdom in business was kind of like if you just found the right strategy, that singular, perfect blueprint, you'd be set.
Right. The silver bullet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that idea is, frankly, completely outdated now. The environment we're operating in is often described using that acronym, VUCA. Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous.
VUCA.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. And it's not just some fancy acronym. It's describing a profound shift. We're talking about forces like, hyperglobalization, technological leaps happening almost daily,
Almost daily, yeah.
and an economic interconnectedness that means, like, a hiccup in one corner of the world can create tsunamis everywhere else. It's intense.
And it's not just that everything's moving faster. It seems like the variety of business environments has just exploded, too.
Absolutely.
If you're a leader in a large corporation today, chances are you're not just in one market, but stretched across dozens, from mature, stable sectors to brand new, emerging ones, each with its own unique set of rules.
Right, totally. And trying to apply a single strategic playbook across all of them,
Forget it.
yeah, it's like trying to paint a masterpiece with just one color. It just doesn't work.
That's such a perfect way to put it, like an artist's palette.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't dream of using only, say, blue for an entire painting, would you? You need a whole spectrum, each suited for a different stroke, a different texture, a different part of the picture.
Precisely. And that's the analogy we're going to be exploring today, this idea of a strategy palette. It's about having the right colors, the right strategic approaches, for the right canvas, for the specific environment you're facing.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive is to unpack some really groundbreaking research from the Boston Consulting Group's Strategy Institute.
Yep, BCG.
We're drawing heavily from their foundational work, especially the book Your Strategy Needs a Strategy: How to Choose and Execute by Martin Reeves, Nut Hanes, and Jamajaya Kumar Sinha.
A key text on this.
And this isn't just theory spun out of thin air, right?
Yeah.
It's built on, half a decade of intense global research.
That's right. 5 years, plus countless real-world conversations with companies, wrestling with these exact issues day in, day out.
So practical stuff. Our goal here is to give you, the listener, a shortcut to being not just informed, but maybe strategically brilliant. We want to pull out those surprising facts and practical insights you can actually use.
Exactly. Let's get into it. Okay, so before we even think about picking a color from our strategy palette, we first need to truly understand the canvas we're working on.
The environment itself.
Right, the business environment. And the BCG research, thankfully, distills these vastly different environments down to 3 incredibly crucial and actually pretty discernible dimensions.
Okay, 3 dimensions. What are they?
These dimensions help us diagnose what kind of strategic challenge we're actually facing. The first one is predictability.
Predictability. Makes sense. Can you forecast it?
That's a fundamental question. Can you actually forecast it? We're talking about whether the future of your market or demand or what your competitors might do, is it clear enough to make reliable long-term predictions?
Like those classic, maybe older industries, utilities maybe, or some consumer goods where trends moved really slowly?
Exactly.
Or-
Think back decades ago. In those environments, you could sketch out a 5 or even 10-year plan with a fair degree of certainty. That's high predictability.
Okay, so if you have that, planning makes sense.
Right. If you can confidently see trends stretching out, then detailed long-term planning is logical. But let's be honest.
Yeah.
Most environments today kind of defy that straightforward forecasting, don't they? The future is often murky, which makes prediction a much less reliable basis for strategy than it used to be.
Definitely feels that way. Okay, so predictability is number 1. What's the second dimension?
The second is malleability.
Malleability, like can you bend it, shape it?
Pretty much. This one is fascinating because it asks, can you, either on your own or maybe working with others, actually shape the environment?
Ah, okay. So not just reacting, but actually influencing.
Exactly. It's about having the power to influence the rules of the game, maybe redefine what customers want, or fundamentally alter how competitors interact.
Like when a new technology pops up.
Perfect example. A new tech can open up opportunities for companies to completely redraw the market landscape, not just, compete within the existing lines. So the question is, can you make your mark on the canvas, or are you just trying to navigate its existing textures?
Gotcha. It's about agency.
Agency, exactly. Some environments are largely fixed, no matter how hard you try to change them. Others are incredibly fluid, offering huge leverage to proactive players who dare to step in and try to shape what comes next.
It's the difference between trying to paddle upstream and actually building the dam, maybe.
That's a great analogy, building the dam.
Yeah. Okay, predictability, malleability.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the third one. You mentioned it could be pretty tough.
Yeah, the third one is perhaps the most visceral, harshness.
Harshness. Okay.
This isn't about long-term trends so much. It's about immediate survival. Can you survive it right now?
Wow. Okay. Existential threats.
Exactly. This dimension assesses whether the environment poses immediate existential threats to a firm's viability. And in those conditions, your entire focus dramatically shifts to short-term survival and often pretty ruthless economizing.
You mentioned strategic drift earlier. Is this related?
Very much so. The research highlights that strategic drift, where a company's strategy just slowly gets out of sync with its environment, or those sudden unexpected crises, well, they're becoming increasingly severe and frequent.
So this dimension is becoming more important.
More important than ever for leaders to understand and respond to. It's the lifeboat dimension, really. The need for radical renewal is far more common now than it probably ever has been.
Okay, so predictability, malleability, and harshness. Those are the three lenses.
Right, and they aren't isolated concepts. When you combine them, they interact to reveal 5 distinct types of business environments.
5 environments.
And, as we'll dig into next, each of these environments calls for a fundamentally different strategic color from our palette.
All right, this brings us to the core of it. The strategy palette itself. You said 5 archetypes, 5 basic colors. What are they?
Yeah, the 5 are classical, adaptive, visionary, shaping, and renewal.
Classical, adaptive, visionary, shaping, renewal. Got it.
And it's absolutely crucial to get this. Each of these isn't just a different way of thinking about strategy, it's a whole different approach to execution.
How so?
Well, they demand different ways of gathering and using information, different ways of fostering innovation, structuring your organization, leading your teams, even the kind of cultural norms that define your workplace. It's the whole package.
Okay, let's break them down. Where do we start?
Let's start with the classical approach. Be big. This is probably the one most familiar to business leaders. It's often the foundation taught in business schools,
The traditional MBA strategy.
Pretty much. The core idea here is to achieve a sustainable competitive advantage through things like sheer scale or superior positioning or unique capabilities. And you do this within an environment that is relatively predictable and non-malleable.
Okay, predictable, and you can't really change it much.
Exactly. Think of it like creating a detailed still life painting. You analyze every detail, you predict how the light will fall, and you meticulously execute a clear, methodical plan.
Because the subject isn't moving.
Right. No need for multiple sketches or changing things on the fly. This approach works perfectly in stable industries where brands are durable, and that long-term planning we talked about is genuinely feasible.
It sounds a bit rigid, though, the classical plan, but you're saying there's power in that.
Absolutely. What's often surprising is that while it sounds rigid, it's very disciplined. That relentless pursuit of incremental gains is precisely what allows for that long-term compounding advantage in those stable environments. It's not about flashy breakthroughs. It's the steady, powerful march of optimization.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, a fantastic real-world example from the research is Mars, Inc.
Mars, the chocolate bars and stuff.
And pet food, gum.
Yeah.
Yeah, think about their iconic brands. Milky Way from 1923, Snickers from 1930, M&M's from 1941, Twix from 1979.
Those are old.
Exactly. Mars has successfully leveraged this classical approach for over a century. Paul S. Michaels, a former president, even stated it outright. Scale is critical in our business.
So they focus on scale.
They strategically focus on categories and brands where they know they can lead and get that scale advantage. And that's how they grew into this hugely profitable $35 billion company and a leader across multiple categories. It's not luck. It's rigorous classical strategy.
Okay, so what are the core elements? You mentioned scale.
Right. So the first element is deciding where to play. And this isn't just about growth for growth's sake. It's about thoughtfully identifying and segmenting attractive markets where you can build a defensible position.
Being selective.
Very selective. Consider Huawei Technologies. They offer a powerful example of a positioning play. They didn't just jump into the toughest markets first.
No. What did they do?
They started by dominating rural China, a less competitive market, to build scale. Then, once they were stronger, they moved into the faster-growing urban centers. Only then did they expand globally, first to emerging markets like Brazil, Russia, Thailand, and finally entering first-world countries like the UK, France, Canada.
That's methodical.
Very. Guo Ping, one of their co-CEOs, explained it. We depend on scale, so we built it in large, low competitive intensity markets before entering more developed markets. They also meticulously focused on telecom equipment before moving into consumer goods later on. Deliberate sequencing.
Okay, so where to play is key. Then what?
Then there's how to win in those chosen markets. Classical firms usually compete by achieving dominant scale, often aiming to be, say, top 3 in their industry.
Right.
Or they can win through differentiation, offering unique value that customers will pay a premium for. Like Gore-Tex and outdoor apparel, people pay more for that brand guarantee.
Right, that makes sense.
Or the third way is through superior, hard-to-replicate capabilities. Things that are valuable, unique, and competitors just can't easily copy. Think of Procter & Gamble leveraging its massive marketing and supply chain muscle to enter new categories like air fresheners or razors, achieving years of growth that rivals couldn't match.
D&G is a classic example, yeah.
Absolutely. And another interesting one is Mahindra, the big Indian multinational.
Mahindra. Tractors.
Tractors. Yes, they're a global leader. They're clearly winning by scale. But in their other business units, they use incredibly precise niche positioning. Their chairman, Anand Mahindra, put it really well. We don't have one monolithic view of how we're going to play. The question is, how do you define your segment? It highlights those deliberate, almost surgical choices of the classical approach.
Okay, so where to play, how to win. How do they actually implement this classical strategy?
Right, implementation. First off, planning is paramount, but it's about setting a clear strategic direction with a long-term view, not just getting stuck in the annual budgeting ritual.
Looking further ahead.
Much further. But the planning cycle itself needs to adapt to the industry's speed. Shell, for instance, famously plans maybe 80 years ahead for energy trends.
80 years.
Yeah, but they also update those plans promptly if circumstances change significantly, like they did in 2013 after running into issues in the Arctic and with shale gas. The interesting paradox is that this deep, long-term planning actually gives them more flexibility for medium-term adjustments.
Huh. That is counterintuitive. Discipline enables flexibility.
Exactly. And Mylan, the pharmaceutical company, is another example. Their CEO, Heather Bresch, said, "Discipline gives us stability, which gives us flexibility." They balance 5-year plans for their core business with deliberate exploration for future growth, making sure the planning process is driven by real insights, not just bureaucracy.
Okay, so planning is key. What about innovation in this model?
Innovation in a classical setting tends to be disciplined, linear, and incremental. It's always guided by expected return on investment, the ROI.
So not radical breakthroughs.
Not usually. It's more about continuous refinement and optimization within known boundaries. Think of a car maker improving fuel efficiency or cabin noise year after year, small compounding gains.
And how is the company structured? The organization.
Classical firms thrive on specialization, clear delegation of tasks, and standardization of processes. There's usually a high level of top-down oversight and a real laser focus on functional excellence, making sure each department does its job perfectly.
Like a well-oiled machine.
Precisely. Quintiles, that clinical research organization we mentioned, embodies this. Their business involves highly structured clinical trials, so it's incredibly plannable. Their CEO described it as a very action-oriented company focused on doing, constantly refining knowledge from its thousands of employees. Their effectiveness comes from perfecting every step of a known process.
What about the culture?
The culture in a classical firm is typically purposeful and highly collaborative, with a very clear focus on shared goals. Mars, again, cultivates a culture where everyone knows they need to work together towards defined objectives.
Clarity and alignment.
Exactly. Everyone knows where to focus their energy so they can concentrate on rigorous execution. Pfizer, too, under Ian Reed, strategically shifted its culture to support its new, more focused strategy, which helps drive up their market cap. It's about aligning everyone towards that precise vision.
And finally, leadership in this classical world.
Leadership is all about providing that clear focus from the very top. Leaders define the high-level goals. They clarify exactly where and how the company will win. They oversee the detailed plans, and they support that rigorous execution. They are the clear conductors of the orchestra.
Okay, so sounds powerful in the right context. What are the big pitfalls, the traps to avoid?
The main traps for classical strategies. One is overestimating the malleability of the environment, thinking you can influence something you actually can't.
Trying to bend something that's rigid?
Right. Or perhaps even more common, just clinging to familiar but outdated practices, like sticking to rigid annual plans even when the environment is clearly no longer stable enough for them. It's that comfort of the known leading to strategic blindness, really.
Okay, that makes sense. So if classical is for predictable, stable environments, what happens when the ground beneath your feet is constantly shifting, when you can't predict what's next?
Okay. That brings us right to our second archetype, the adaptive approach. Be fast.
Be fast.
Okay. This strategy is designed for environments that are highly unpredictable and also non-malleable, meaning you can neither reliably forecast the future nor can you meaningfully shape it yourself.
So you can't predict it, can't change it. What do?
You adapt. In this kind of world, any competitive advantage you gain is, by its very nature, incredibly short-lived. So this approach is less about deep cerebral prediction and optimization.
Less like the classical approach.
Much less. It's much more about continuously trying new things, constantly monitoring what works and what doesn't, engaging in rapid strategic experimentation, and maintaining extreme organizational flexibility. It's all about iterating, learning, and adapting super quickly.
Like painting in that windstorm you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. You can't plan every stroke perfectly, but you can react quickly, make small adjustments, test things out, and see what sticks. Keep what works, discard what doesn't, fast.
Where does this approach work best?
It really shines when the environment is turbulent, maybe fragmented, immature, or driven by rapidly changing technologies and regulation. Think about industries like software development, internet retailing, maybe even high fashion.
Things moving at lightning speed.
Right. And the data really backs this up. The research found that roughly 2/3 of sectors now experience high market volatility. That's a huge jump from very few back in the 1960s.
Wow, 2/3.
Yeah. And this turbulence just erodes those traditional competitive advantages much faster. The top industry leaders are losing their positions much more frequently than they used to.
So being adaptable is crucial.
It is. And the surprising insight here is that success in these environments isn't necessarily about being right from the start with some grand plan. It's more about being the fastest to learn and adjust.
Fastest to learn. I like that. Any examples?
Tata Consultancy Services, TCS, is a great case study.
The big IT services company?
That's the one. They operate in an environment they can neither predict nor fundamentally change. Think about the shifts from client servers to cloud computing, AI, etc. TCS continuously adapts.
Ow.
They've managed to grow from like $155 million in revenue back in '96 to over $13 billion today. And despite their immense size, they remain incredibly externally oriented, constantly sensing what clients need now and quickly reconfiguring their services and teams to deliver it.
So staying close to the customer, reacting fast.
Exactly. Another standout example is Inditex, the company behind Zara.
Zara, the fashion retailer, famous for speed.
Absolutely. Instead of trying to predict fashion trends months in advance like traditional retailers.
Which is notoriously difficult.
Right. Zara focuses on reacting faster to actual customer preferences as they emerge. They've famously shortened their supply chain design studio to store to about 3 weeks. The industry average is more like 5 months.
3 weeks versus 5 months.
Huge difference. They produce in small batches, treating them almost like real-time experiments. If a style sells well, they quickly scale up production. If not, it disappears.
And the result?
Zara ends up discounting only about 15–20% of its inventory, the industry average, around 50%. It's a powerful model showing how speed and responsiveness can beat perfect foresight.
Okay, so how do you implement this adaptive approach? What does the strategizing look like?
Strategizing here involves what BCG calls very select and scale up cycles.
Very select scale up, like evolution.
Exactly like biological evolution applied to business. There are no predefined end goals because the environment is just too unpredictable. Strategy truly emerges iteratively. Firms often take action first, then rigorously analyze the results.
Act first, analyze later. Opposite of classical.
Pretty much. And experimentation is focused maybe on areas with high growth potential or significant threats you see coming, or maybe in crucial blind spots where you lack information. It's like sending out probes.
And the experimentation itself.
Adaptive firms either tap into the natural variance that occurs within their operations, different stores trying slightly different things, or they proactively generate new ideas to test. The key is making small, low-cost bets.
Small bets, not big ones.
Right. And applying disciplined rules for selecting which experiments move forward and which get cut. Google is a master of this.
Google, yeah, they kill products all the time.
They do. They actively measure outcomes, launching or killing maybe 10 to 15 products annually without huge internal drama.
Yeah.
They even famously require project specs to be just 1 page long.
Why 1 page?
Specifically to reduce people's reluctance to change course or kill a project if the experiment isn't working out. Less investment, less attachment. The key is making failure cheap and turning it into a learning opportunity.
That makes sense. I heard a great story about Caesars Entertainment, too.
Ah, yes. Their CEO, Gary Loveman, apparently used to joke.
Close the joke.
There are 2 ways to get fired from Caesars: stealing from the company or failing to include a proper control group in your business experiment.
Wow. That's serious about experiments.
It perfectly highlights their rigorous approach. They run dozens of parallel tests with control groups to figure out the best promotions, the best hotel services, everything. That level of scientific discipline and iteration is what makes the adaptive approach work.
So information must be critical then.
Absolutely critical. Adaptive firms have to continuously refresh their external data feeds. They need deep analytic capabilities to spot those weak signals and hidden patterns emerging from their experiments.
And use that info how?
They use it both to manage individual experiments, should we fund this more or kill it? And also to monitor the overall portfolio of experiments. What's our success rate? How fast are we learning? What's it costing? It's a constant feedback loop.
And innovation, is it different from classical?
Very different. It's continuous and operationally embedded, driven by small, frequent steps, not big planned projects necessarily. And there's a high tolerance for failure because failure provides valuable data.
So it's part of everyone's job almost.
Often, yes. It's woven into daily operations, not just siloed in an R&D department.
What about the organization structure needed for this?
Adaptive organizations need to be extremely externally oriented, constantly scanning. They need to be information-enabled, decentralized, pushing decision-making down, and flexible enough to reallocate resources really quickly as experiments pan out or fail.
No big rigid plans then.
Definitely avoid those book-length plans that would just hinder rapid pivots. Intuit is a good example here. Their CEO calls them a 30-year-old startup because they continuously retool their innovation and experimentation processes. Always moving, always shaking things up.
And Corning, with Gorilla Glass.
Another great example of organizational flexibility. Their structure has very few silos. They use common incentives so people can quickly adjust roles and reallocate resources when a new opportunity pops up, like a new type of smartphone needing a specific glass.
Because they don't know exactly what's coming.
Right. They can't predict far in advance what device makers will build, but they can quickly mobilize their entire organization to meet those emerging needs once they appear. It's like building a living, responsive system.
And the culture that supports this must be different too.
Hugely different. It promotes challenge, constructive dissent, cognitive diversity. You want people thinking differently. It fosters a bit of playfulness to encourage new ideas. And it articulates common behaviors and a shared purpose rather than precise, fixed endpoints.
Like Netflix. Their culture deck is famous.
Exactly. Netflix's explicit freedom and responsibility culture with principles like process debt is not unlike tech debt is a prime example. That culture was a huge factor in their stock price, soaring tenfold between 2009 and 2014. It's a culture that trusts its people to make smart, fast decisions.
And 3M, they have that tinkering time, right?
Yeah, the famous 15% time where employees can work on their own basic research projects. It's remarkably contributed to about 30% of 3M's sales coming from products introduced within the last 5 years. It shows they understand innovation needs exploration and some freedom.
So what's the leadership role in this adaptive world if they're not setting fixed goals?
Leaders set the context rather than rigid goals. They orient the organization externally, making sure everyone is looking outside. They foster that experimentation-friendly culture we talked about. They specify the rules for those experiments, like the Caesars control groups. And they highlight crucial focus areas. They're not dictating answers. They're guiding the exploration process.
Okay. And the traps for this adaptive strategy, what can go wrong?
Oh, quite a few things. Overconfidence in your initial beliefs can be fatal. Silencing dissent, you need those different views. Betting the firm on a single massive experiment, that's the opposite of the small bets approach.
Right. Avoid the big gambles.
Exactly. And probably the biggest killer, just falling prey to organizational inertia. Not being willing to actually change based on what you learn. You have to be willing to fail fast, learn, and then genuinely change course, not just, double down on a bad bet because it was your idea.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've covered classical, be big, for predictable environments, and adaptive, be fast, for unpredictable ones you can't change. What's next?
Our third archetype is the visionary approach. Be first.
Be first. Okay, this sounds exciting.
It is. This approach is for those rarer environments where a single firm, often through sheer will and foresight, can effectively create or recreate an entire industry.
Yeah.
It's about truly inventing the future.
Inventing the future. Wow.
Yeah, it involves seeing a valuable, maybe even inevitable possibility that others don't see and then boldly pursuing it, often against significant odds.
Like that Alan Kay quote.
Exactly. The computer scientist Alan Kay famously said, "The best way to predict the future is to invent it." That's the essence of the visionary strategy.
When does this work? It sounds risky.
It is risky. It works when there's a genuine white space opportunity or maybe an existing industry that's just ripe for disruption, or when the environment can actually be shaped by one firm's singular drive. It requires immense imagination, incredible speed, and absolute unwavering persistence.
Like being the first artist to paint a landscape no one else can even imagine yet.
That's a great way to think about it. Bringing something entirely new to life, stroke by stroke, based on your vision.
Could you give an example of this?
Quintiles, the CRO we mentioned earlier in the classical context, actually started as a visionary company.
Ah, interesting. How so?
Its founder, Dennis Gillings, saw an opportunity back in 1982 to profoundly improve how drugs were developed. He basically invented a whole new business model that the Clinical Research Organization, or CRO, nobody was doing it like that before.
So he created a new category.
He did. He moved fast and boldly, growing revenue from $10 million in 1990 to $1 billion by 1996. Gillings later reflected on that visionary bet. If you pick a big idea and do it well, the company gets to a leadership position in the whole space. He even admitted he initially overestimated potential competitors, but his speed and conviction built an unassailable lead early on.
So vision plus speed plus conviction.
That's the formula. Another really fascinating, more recent case is 23andMe.
The personal genetics company.
Right. Anne Wojcicki co-founded it in 2006 with a clear, incredibly ambitious vision to completely transform personal genomics and how people access their own health information.
And they were aggressive about it.
Very. They slashed their price from nearly $1,000 down to $99 to try and achieve critical mass and market leadership. Their goal was huge. 25 million tests. And they persisted through massive challenges, like that big FDA order telling them to stop marketing health reports for a while.
Yeah, I remember that.
It just shows the sheer conviction and resilience you need for a visionary approach. It's not just about seeing the future, but having the absolute tenacity to build it, brick by brick, setback by setback.
Okay, so how do you implement a visionary strategy? Where does the strategizing start?
Strategizing usually begins by envisaging the opportunity. This means tapping into a nascent megatrend really early, like increased connectivity or digitization back in the day, or applying a breakthrough new technology in a novel way, or maybe addressing some deep customer dissatisfaction or a latent unspoken need, or sometimes just completely innovating a tired old business model. It's about seeing signals others miss.
Looking for those gaps.
Exactly. Then you formulate a vision and a high-level plan. This defines the ultimate destination, that endpoint you're aiming for. But the specific path to get there needs to remain flexible, adaptive as you learn more.
So a clear destination, flexible path.
Right. And it absolutely requires business model innovation, a real quantum leap, not just incremental improvements. Remember Anne Wojcicki saying about 23andMe? We're not a healthcare company. We are totally outside the established order. That captures the revolutionary spirit. They weren't just making a better test, they were inventing the whole idea of a direct-to-consumer personal genomics service.
And then you have to sell that vision, right?
Crucially, you must communicate the vision broadly and powerfully. You need to gain market acceptance, get investors excited, attract talent. Speed is vital here, too. If you can't articulate your vision clearly and quickly, someone else might try to copy it, or you might just fail to attract the resources you need to make it happen.
Any examples of that communication piece?
Yeah, Mobiquity, a mobile tech company. They deliberately resisted getting bogged down in formal, detailed strategic plans early on. Instead, they focused relentlessly on communicating a clear vision and a general plan that they said remained 90% intact from day one.
How do they communicate it?
They formed something called a Wireless Innovation Council, bringing in big companies like GE, Marriott, Fidelity, even research institutions. The goal wasn't just to gather ideas, but to actively build awareness and credibility for the new market space they were trying to create. It shows how vital that external buy-in is for a visionary.
Okay, so information for a visionary. It's not about market research in the traditional sense.
Not really. Visionary firms scan relentlessly for those opportunities to create a new market reality. They have to look far beyond face value, beyond what customers are asking for today. That famous Henry Ford quote fits perfectly here.
The faster horses one.
That's the one. If I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. Visionaries aren't just listening to what's asked for. They're seeing what could be, what people don't even know they need yet.
And the innovation itself?
It's inherently disruptive in this context. It's often a brand new product and a completely new business model rolled into one. Think TiVo inventing the DVR, or Zipcar pioneering car sharing as a service. It's not based on refining existing processes. It's about creating entirely new ones from scratch.
How should the organization be set up for this?
Typically, it involves small, highly focused teams. Processes are often informal, flexible. For large established companies trying to do something visionary, it often means physically separating these visionary units from the core business.
Why separate them?
To protect them from the established processes, the bureaucracy, the sort of gravitational pull of the status quo back in the main company, you need that isolation, that protected space to really foster radical new ideas and let them grow without being squashed.
And the culture needed.
You need an exceptionally high tolerance for ambiguity because the path is uncertain. You need immense conviction in the vision, obviously, and just sheer persistence to push through all the inevitable setbacks and doubters.
Sounds like it takes a special kind of leadership.
Absolutely. Incredible boldness is required. Often, personal sacrifice. A genuine willingness to completely change the system, to challenge everything. And leaders also need the wisdom to recognize when the environment changes, when maybe it's time to shift out of the visionary mode, like Quintile's eventually transitioning to a more classical approach once its new CRO market became established and stabilized.
So being a pioneer, then knowing when to become more of a steward.
Exactly. Knowing when the inventing phase is over and the optimizing phase needs to begin.
What are the big traps for visionaries? Where does it go wrong?
Well, overestimating your own ability to predict the future perfectly is a big one. Underestimating rivals who might see your success and quickly follow or copy you. Getting bogged down in too much planning detail too early, which stifles that needed agility. Or, crucially, just failing to secure that critical mass of customers or investors needed to actually sustain the bold vision until it takes hold, running out of fuel before you reach the destination.
Right, okay, so classical, adaptive, visionary, that's 3. What's number 4?
Number 4 is the shaping approach. Orchestrate.
Orchestrate, okay, like conducting an orchestra.
Kind of, but maybe an orchestra where you don't own all the instruments and you need to convince everyone to play together. This approach comes into play when there's a significant opportunity to shape an entire industry, usually at an early stage when the rules are still being written.
Shaping an industry, how is that different from visionary? Visionaries shape things too, right?
They do, but here's the crucial distinction. Shaping typically occurs in environments that are highly malleable, meaning they can be shaped, but also highly unpredictable.
Yeah.
And the absolute key difference is you cannot shape alone.
Cannot shape alone, okay.
Visionary is often about one firm's drive. Shaping requires deep collaboration with others, partners, suppliers, customers, sometimes even competitors to share the risk, to bring in complementary capabilities, and to build the new market quickly together. It's less about your individual enterprise and much more about orchestrating entire ecosystems.
Ecosystems, that's a big buzzword.
It is, but it's central here. Think of being an architect designing a whole new city district. You have the vision, but you absolutely need to get all the landowners, the builders, the utility companies, the future residents, all on board and working together to bring it to life. You're the orchestrator.
Where does this shaping strategy work best?
It's particularly effective in emerging markets. The research shows those markets are often twice as unpredictable and twice as malleable as mature ones. Lots of opportunity to shape things.
Okay, that makes sense.
It also applies to young, nascent industries where there's no single dominant player or established platform yet. Success hinges on seizing an inflection point, that moment of opportunity, and having enough influence and foresight to attract numerous stakeholders to your collaborative vision.
Can you give an example?
Novo Nordisk provides a brilliant long-term example of shaping, specifically how they approached the Chinese diabetes care market starting back in the 1990s.
Novo Nordisk, the Danish pharma company. What do they do in China?
They couldn't predict the exact path of how the diabetes market would develop there. It was too new, too unpredictable. So instead of just trying to sell insulin, they collaborated extensively with patients, with regulators, with doctors. They invested heavily in physician education. They forged deep partnerships with the Chinese Ministry of Health and the World Diabetes Foundation.
So they were building the market infrastructure.
Exactly. They were influencing the rules of the game, raising awareness, training professionals. By 2010, Novo Nordisk wasn't just a player. They were the uncontested market leader with over 60% insulin market share in China. Their CEO even described this collaborative shaping approach as their blueprint for other emerging markets. They literally built the market as they entered it.
Wow, that's powerful. What about tech examples? Ecosystems often mean tech.
Absolutely. Think about the smartphone ecosystems, Google's Android and Apple's iOS. They became dominant by shaping their industries. How? By inviting thousands of external developers onto their platforms. They created thriving app economies that neither Apple nor Google could possibly have built alone.
Right, the app stores.
Exactly. Contrast that with Nokia's Symbian platform, which failed. Stephen Elop, Nokia's CEO at the time, famously lamented, "Our competitors aren't taking market share with devices. They are taking market share with an entire ecosystem." It perfectly illustrates the power of successful shaping and the peril of failing to do it in an ecosystem world.
Okay, so shaping requires collaboration. How do you implement this? What's the strategizing?
Strategizing in a shaping approach really begins by actively engaging external stakeholders. You need to develop a truly collaborative vision for how the industry should develop. It's less about just your company's vision and much more about painting a picture of a shared future that benefits everyone involved.
Getting buy-in to a collective goal.
Precisely. Then, the orchestrator, the shaper, must build and operate a platform. This is often a digital marketplace or maybe a core technology standard that brings all those stakeholders together. The platform needs to facilitate low-cost interaction and provide that crucial market-based feedback.
Like the App Store again.
The App Store is the classic example. Apple provides the platform. Developers respond to perceived demand by creating apps. Users rate the apps, providing instant feedback. Value is co-created by millions of participants, orchestrated by Apple.
Do shapers have to give things away?
Often, yes.
Yeah.
Companies must be willing to share resources, maybe APIs, development kits, data, but often with strings attached. They might offer tools or benefits that are only really valuable within their ecosystem, which creates a strong incentive for others to participate and stay involved.
Okay, build the platform, get people on it. Then what?
Then you must continuously evolve the ecosystem. This means scaling it up, extending the platform's capabilities, but also maintaining flexibility and diversity within it. You want to maximize those network effects. The more participants, the more valuable the platform becomes for everyone.
Like Alibaba in China. They seem to have built a massive ecosystem.
Alibaba Group is a textbook case. Jack Ma started with a B2B portal. Then they launched Taobao, the C2C marketplace like eBay. Then came Alipay for payments. Then cloud computing. Each step built on the last, expanding the ecosystem.
What was their philosophy?
Their former chief strategy officer, Ming Zhang, said, "Our business is a platform business, so everything is a platform. The most important thing is the number of clicks." They focused on stimulating sizable markets with significant network effects. And crucially, they try to intervene as little as possible, instead creating powerful incentives for others to build, trade, and innovate on their platforms.
Interesting. Let the ecosystem run itself, mostly. What about information flow and shaping?
Shapers gather a lot of external information, obviously, but here's the counterintuitive part. They also need to freely share a lot of information with their collaborators.
Share information. Why?
To foster that joint development, to ensure the entire ecosystem can learn and adapt together. It's a give-to-get model. If your partners succeed, the whole ecosystem thrives, and you, as the orchestrator, benefit.
And innovation. Is it done jointly, too?
Inherently, it involves co-developing solutions with partners, like Google's Android, allowing phone makers and app developers to co-develop features and apps. The innovation isn't just confined to your company's R&D lab, it's distributed throughout the entire network.
What kind of organization does this require? It sounds very outward-looking.
Fundamentally open, boundary spanning, comfortable with letting go of strict, direct control. It requires a profound mindset shift away from rigid internal divisions and towards embracing external collaboration as the norm.
And the culture.
It needs to be outwardly looking, highly inclusive. It needs to encourage critical dialogue, foster deep respect for the other players in the ecosystem, even competitors sometimes. Red Hat, the open source software company, really cultivates this.
Red Hat.
Their CEO, Jim Whitehurst, emphasized, "We respect the ecosystem. We understand the people with the most influence and get them to work for us." He sees leadership there not as internal control, but as being the catalysts in communities, inspiring and enabling external collaboration. It's a totally different view of power influence over control.
So the leadership role is different, too.
Completely. Here's another counterintuitive insight. Shaping leaders often gain clout and respect precisely by ceding a degree of control. They orchestrate the overall effort, setting broad guidelines and incentives to foster that external collaboration rather than dictating every single move. They're more like gardeners tending a complex ecosystem than traditional top-down commanders.
Fascinating. What are the traps here? What can go wrong with shaping?
A big one is not accurately assessing your own role. Do you really have the influence and credibility to be the orchestrator? Trying to shape when you can't is a recipe for failure. Another is value leakage. Maybe partners exploit your platform without contributing fairly. Trying to lock in partners too rigidly can backfire, stifling innovation. And conversely, maintaining too much tight control when openness is actually the key to growth. It's a very delicate balancing act.
Okay, that's 4. Classical, adaptive, visionary, shaping. What's the 5th and final one?
The 5th archetype is the renewal approach. Be viable.
Renewal. Be viable. This sounds like when things are going badly.
Exactly. This strategy is all about restoring a firm's vitality and competitiveness when it's operating in a truly harsh environment.
That harshness dimension we talked about.
Precisely. This harshness usually stems from one of two things. Either a long period of that strategic drift where the company just slowly became misaligned with its changing environment.
Like boiling a frog slowly?
Kind of, yeah. Or it could be a sudden, acute crisis, a financial crash, a disruptive competitor, a regulatory blow that threatens the company's very existence right now.
So it's a turnaround situation.
It is, and the research describes it as a two-phase process. Think of it like corporate emergency room followed by a rehabilitation clinic.
Okay, phase 1, the emergency room.
Phase 1 is all about focusing and economizing for short-term survival. This means making deep, often painful cuts, but usually in non-core areas. Preserving cash is king, ruthlessly streamlining operations.
Stopping the bleeding.
Stopping the bleeding. But crucially, it requires de-averaging the cuts and investments. You can't just do a 10% cut across the board. You have to surgically decide where to cut very deeply, but also where you might need to protect or even strategically increase investment to fund future growth, even in the midst of crisis.
Investing while cutting, that sounds hard.
It's incredibly hard, but vital. American Express's response to the 2008 financial crisis is textbook example here.
Amex, what do they do?
They got hit by a triple punch. Rising loan defaults, plummeting consumer spending, and banks hoarding capital, making it hard for Amex to fund itself.
A perfect storm.
Pretty much. CEO Ken Chenault didn't flinch. He cut 10% of the workforce, shed non-core activities, slashed ancillary investments. But, and this is key, he simultaneously protected funding for major growth initiatives he believed were critical for the future.
What was his motto?
His mantra was clear. Stay liquid, stay profitable, and invest selectively to grow the business. And it worked. By 2009, their stock had recovered significantly, they maintained their dividend, and stayed profitable through the worst of it.
That's impressive discipline. What's the alternative? What happens if you don't renew effectively?
Well, consider the tragic story of Kodak.
Ah, Kodak. The classic example of missing a shift.
Exactly. In 1975, they owned 90% of the U.S. film market. Incredibly, they even developed the very first digital camera that same year.
They invented it.
They did. Yet, they filed for bankruptcy in 2012. Why? They just failed to anticipate the sheer speed of digital technology substitution. They were too comfortable with film, especially as countries like China completely leapfrogged film photography, going straight to digital
They
phones.
got complacent.
As a company source admitted later, with hindsight, we'd gotten some false security because the speed of technology substitution had been historically slow. They weren't prepared for the harsh reality when it hit, and they couldn't execute the necessary brutal renewal fast enough.
So phase one is survival. What's phase two, the rehabilitation clinic?
Phase two is about pivoting to one of the other four strategies for long-term growth. You use the resources you freed up in phase one, the cash, the leaner structure, to fund fundamental innovation and strategic realignment. You position the company for success in the new reality. It's not just about surviving the crisis, it's about emerging stronger and pointed in the right direction for the future.
Okay, how does implementation work across these two phases? Let's start with information in phase one.
In phase one, survival mode, information is about incredibly rigorous analysis. You use tools like activity-based costing to see where every dollar is really going, benchmarking against competitors, delayering analysis to identify unnecessary management layers.
Finding every possible saving.
Every single one. Some firms even use metrics like DICE, which measures likely projects success based on its duration, the integrity of the team, management commitment, and required effort to track performance ruthlessly and ensure every single initiative is earning its keep. Total transparency on performance is key.
And the organization in phase one.
Streamlined. You ruthlessly reduce layers, you use intense process reengineering to cut waste. A strict hierarchy is often temporarily imposed to ensure decisions get made and executed quickly. Sometimes a temporary program management office, a PMO, is set up just to enforce discipline and coordinate all the complex changes. It's about bringing order to the chaos.
Okay, then you survive. Phase two, pivot. How does information change?
The focus shifts dramatically. Now you're looking for long-term signals again, new external opportunities. What's the next growth engine? Where should we place our bets for the future?
And innovation.
Now it's about the fundamental new ideas needed for that sustained future growth, not just incremental tweaks to survive. What's the big pivot?
And the organization transforms again.
Yes, you start rebuilding capabilities that might have been cut too deeply. You reorganize the company to support the chosen new strategic direction, maybe classical adaptive, visionary, or shaping. AIG, after its massive post-crisis bailout and initial cost-cutting under CEO Bob Benmosh,
AAG, yeah, huge turnaround.
he reduced or spun off over 30 different companies, completely reorganized the remaining ones along global product lines, and worked hard to restore confidence with a new One AIG identity. They didn't just get smaller, they became fundamentally different, ready to compete again.
What about the culture during renewal? Must be tough.
Incredibly tough. In phase one, leadership has to actively fight pessimism, find ways to celebrate even small wins just to keep morale from collapsing during the painful cuts. Then, in phase two, they need to catalyze a fundamental cultural change to align everyone with the new strategy, rebuilding enthusiasm and confidence in the future. It's about rebuilding belief from the ground up.
And leadership seems absolutely critical here.
Probably more critical in renewal than in any other approach. Leaders must have the courage to make those deep cuts early, even when unpopular. They have to clearly and constantly communicate the new vision for the future. Brent Saunders, who led Bausch & Lomb through a major turnaround.
Bausch & Lomb, the eye care company.
Right. He focused first on deeply understanding customers. Then he led very top-down with a constant, clear plan, emphasizing that discipline and speed are critical. But crucially, he also worked tirelessly to generate employee enthusiasm for the long-term vision, even while making tough calls like consolidating operations. It's this difficult dance between facing harsh reality and inspiring hope for the future.
What are the traps specific to renewal?
Falling into multiple grinding rounds of cost-cutting without a clear strategic pivot in sight that's incredibly demoralizing and rarely works long-term. Another big one is failing to protect those critical growth initiatives during the cuts, essentially mortgaging the future just to survive the present. Losing focus on that long-term vision during the grueling process is easy to do. And, of course, leaders themselves succumbing to fear and insecurity, which then just cascades down and paralyzes the organization.
Okay, 5 distinct strategies: classical, adaptive, visionary, shaping, renewal. That's a powerful toolkit. But here's where it gets really interesting, maybe more complex. Most big companies aren't just in one environment, right?
Exactly. That's the critical insight for most large organizations today. This leads us to the power of ambidexterity. Be polychromatic.
Polychromatic, meaning multiple colors.
Precisely. Most large companies, especially global ones, operate in multiple diverse environments simultaneously. They might have one division in a stable classical market, another in a rapidly adapting tech space, maybe launching a visionary new venture, and perhaps orchestrating a shaping play in an emerging market,
All at the same time.
all at the same time. This means they can't just pick one strategic color for the whole company. They need to master the ability to employ different strategic approaches concurrently. This is ambidexterity, that ability that the researchers talk about to run and transform on parallel tracks.
Like our artist again, now painting different parts of a huge complex canvas, each section requiring a totally distinct technique and maybe even a different palette of colors.
That's the perfect metaphor, running the existing business efficiently while simultaneously exploring and building the future.
And this isn't just a nice academic idea, it actually makes a difference.
A huge difference. It's not just a nice to have, it's becoming a profound competitive imperative. The research clearly shows that these ambidextrous companies significantly outperform the market.
How much?
Get this. Between 2006 and 2011, ambidextrous firms achieved, on average, a 10–15% higher total shareholder return compared to their less adaptable peers.
10–15% outperformance, that's massive.
It's a massive delta. It shows the real value of being able to manage multiple strategic approaches effectively.
Okay, so how do you actually achieve this kind of strategic ambidexterity? It sounds like it could just create chaos, having different parts of the company doing completely different things.
It definitely requires careful management. One key technique the research highlights is separation.
Separation, meaning what?
It means deliberately, consciously managing which strategic approach belongs in which subunit of the company,
Yeah.
whether that's a specific division, a particular geography, or maybe even a specific functional area like R&D versus manufacturing. It's about clearly drawing lines and delineating where each color from our palette should be applied.
So you don't try to make everyone adaptive if only one division needs to be.
Exactly. You tailor the approach. Take PepsiCo.
PepsiCo, huge company. Snacks, drinks.
Right. Over $22 billion brands. Global operations covering everything from salty Frito-Lay snacks to Tropicana juices to Quaker Oats. They absolutely need multiple approaches at the same time.
Because snacks and juice are different businesses.
Totally different dynamics. As their former CEO, Indra Nooyi, recognized, you talk of a single approach to strategy, and therein lies the problem. A single monolithic approach just won't work across such a diverse portfolio. They can't run their mature, stable beverage business using the same fast, adaptive approach they might need for exploring new health food trends.
Okay, so PepsiCo separates. Any other examples?
Towers Watson, the global consulting firm, provides another interesting case. They explicitly adopted a three-pillar strategy to achieve the separation.
3 pillars.
Pillar 1 focused on their core consulting business that needed a classical, efficiency-driven approach. Pillar 2 focused on growth through M&A. And Pillar 3 was all about developing radical innovation and risky new bets that required a much more adaptive, experimental mindset.
And how do they keep them separate?
They even created a special fellows program where participants spent 75% of their time just on creative solutions and exploration. The explicit goal was to prevent the needs of the exploratory, adaptive side of the business from getting bogged down by or interfering with the efficiency requirements of the existing stable core business. That's the trick. Keeping the different colors from mixing in ways that would be counterproductive.
Protecting the new from the old, in a way.
Protecting them from each other, really, so each can operate optimally according to its own logic. Pfizer, under Ian Reed, is another compelling example of this de-averaging.
Pfizer again. How do they de-average?
Reed adopted a clearly de-averaged approach across their incredibly diverse units, think consumer products versus vaccines versus highly innovative new drugs, and across mature markets versus rapidly emerging markets. He explicitly recognized the need for different cultures and different strategic approaches for different parts of the business.
Even cultures, even.
Yes. For example, he noted that the Established Products Group, which they called GIP Global Established Pharma, needed a different culture, maybe more classical, focused on efficiency than the Innovative Products Group, GEK Global Innovative Pharma, or their cutting-edge R&D arm, which needed to be much more adaptive or even visionary.
So tailoring the culture, too.
Exactly. Red himself said the culture we need in GIP isn't the same as that in GEP. And by simultaneously de-averaging their strategy, applying different colors where needed, while also reducing overall complexity and cutting over $4 billion in costs between 2011 and 2013.
They did both. De-average strategy, A&D, cut costs.
Yes. A complex balancing act. But the result? Pfizer saw its market capitalization increase by almost 50% through 2014. It's a powerful testament to the value of ambidexterity when executed well. It's not just a random patchwork of unrelated businesses. It's a deliberate, managed collage of strategic approaches working in concert under one roof. So if a company is going to be polychromatic using multiple strategies, actually animating that collage within a large, complex organization is incredibly challenging.
Why challenging? Because of the contradictions.
Precisely because of the apparent contradictions. How do you run parts of the company fast and other parts slow? How do you encourage meticulous planning in one area and wild experimentation in another? It feels like it could pull the company apart.
So this is where leadership becomes absolutely crucial.
Absolutely. This is where the leader truly has to become the animator of the strategy palette, bringing it all to life in a coherent way.
How do they do that? What are the key roles?
The research highlights 4, maybe 5 essential roles for leaders navigating this complex polychromatic world. First, you need to be a salesperson.
Salesperson,
Sell-
selling the strategy.
Yes. Selling it internally and externally. Crafting a clear, coherent narrative, a story for investors, employees, even customers, that explains the firm's dynamic, multifaceted strategy despite its inherent complexity. Ian Red at Pfizer is a good example again. That collection of diverse strategic approaches could easily seem confusing or unfocused to outsiders if he hadn't constantly articulated the overarching logic. It's about building belief in the coherence of the collage.
Okay, salesperson, what's second?
Second, the leader must be a segmenter.
Segmenter, like dividing things up.
Exactly. Intelligently de-averaging the strategy, as we discussed. Precisely identifying where the different strategic approaches are needed across the organization, which division gets which color. Both Ian Red at Pfizer and Indra Nooyi at PepsiCo strongly emphasized this role. They inherently understood that a single approach couldn't possibly work across all their diverse businesses, and a key part of their job was to carve out those distinct strategic domains and assign the right approach to each.
Making those tough choices about where each strategy fits.
Making the choices and making them explicit. Third, leaders need to act as an inquisitor.
It's inquisitor, asking tough questions.
Asking the right questions. They don't just dictate answers from the top down. Instead, they set and continually retune the correct context for each different strategic approach by asking probing, insightful questions. This stimulates the specific type of critical thinking and problem solving that's appropriate for that particular approach. Classical questions for a classical unit, adaptive questions for an adaptive one, etc.
So they guide the thinking.
They guide the thinking. Indra Nooyi famously advised her team to lean in on themes that need a little bit of a push. This allows the optimal strategy for each unit to emerge more organically from the teams closest to the market, guided by leadership's questions rather than being just a top-down mandate. It's about asking the right questions to get people thinking in the right color for their specific situation.
Okay, salesperson, segmenter, inquisitor. What's fourth?
Fourth, the leader needs to serve as an antenna.
Antenna. Big enough signal.
Exactly. Continuously looking outward, scanning the horizon, scanning the environment for important shifts, and then selectively amplifying the important external signals to ensure that each business unit stays attuned to changes in its specific environment. Changes in predictability, malleability, or hollowness. They're picking up those faint signals from the outside world and making sure the right parts of the organization hear them clearly and loudly.
Helping prevent that strategic drift we talked about.
Precisely, keeping everyone connected to external reality. And there's maybe a fifth role that often comes into play, especially when things need to happen fast.
Which
This
is
accelerator.
accelerator, putting the foot down.
Kind of. This is where leaders consciously decide to put their personal weight, their influence, their resources behind select critical initiatives that absolutely need to move faster. They clear bureaucratic obstacles, they provide extra funding or talent, they give it high visibility within the organization. They ensure those fast strategic moves, maybe an adaptive experiment or a visionary launch, actually gain the momentum they need to succeed.
So identifying the crucial bets and pushing them hard.
Exactly. Now, having said all that about multiple strategies, there are some rare cases where a leader might intentionally set a single strategic approach across the entire organization.
When would that make sense?
Usually it happens if the entire industry is perceived to be on the cusp of a fundamental, potentially existential shift that will eventually affect all parts of the business. Ken Chenault at American Express, for example, when he drove digital transformation after the recession.
Amex again.
Yeah, he intentionally wove that digital strategy into every single part of the firm's fabric. He didn't just create a separate digital unit or segment it off. He decided the whole company needed to embrace digital because he saw it as an all-encompassing shift that would impact every single business unit they had. It was a unifying imperative.
So sometimes one color is right for the whole canvas if the whole landscape is changing.
In rare transformative moments, yes. But for most large companies, most of the time, ambidexterity is the name of the game. So the overall practice for leaders today is really to deepen their own understanding of each color on the strategy palette, use the diagnostic tools, predictability, malleability, harshness to assess their specific challenges, and then consciously choose and animate the best approach, a combination of approaches, for each particular problem or business unit they oversee. It's about building and managing a portfolio of strategic capabilities. But, and it's a big but, despite the clear logic and the proven benefits of this multifaceted palette-based approach, there are some incredibly common traps where strategy just goes wrong. Companies know they should do this, but they fall down in practice.
What are the big traps?
The first and maybe the most fundamental is simply misperception.
Misperceiving the environment.
Exactly. While the research found a remarkable 90% of leaders surveyed agree on the importance of having a differentiated strategy tailored to the environment, many of them still fail to correctly perceive their actual environment.
How so?
They often overestimate their ability to predict the future, or they overestimate their power to control or shape the environment. This leads them to choose the wrong color from the palette right from the start, maybe applying a classical plan when they really need an adaptive approach.
Seeing the world as you wish it were, not as it is.
That's a good way to put it. The second trap is popularity bias.
Popularity bias. Following trends.
Kind of. Leaders sometimes over-declare that they are using adaptive, visionary, or shaping approaches simply because those concepts, agility, speed, experimentation, ecosystems, have gained so much popularity recently. They sound cutting edge, they sound exciting.
So they say they're adaptive even if they're not really.
Right. They might claim to be adaptive even when their actual business conditions, may be stable and predictable, don't warrant it at all. This creates a profound mismatch between their stated strategy and the reality of their environment. It's like insisting on painting a vibrant, abstract piece when the commission was actually for a meticulous classical portrait.
Using the fashionable approach instead of the right approach.
Exactly. And the third big trap is, even when the right approach is chosen, organizations often stumble in application.
Stumble in applying it. How?
They hold on to familiar, comfortable practices, often ones associated with the classical or maybe visionary strategies they're used to, even when they've nominally decided to be, say, adaptive or shaping.
Like old habits dying hard.
Precisely. The most striking example from the research. Nearly 90% of companies surveyed still develop rigid, comprehensive annual strategic plans.
90%.
Yeah.
Still doing annual plans.
Yep. Regardless of the actual pace of change in their specific business environments. Many companies operating in highly adaptive environments where things change month to month are still locked into this annual ritual.
Why? If it doesn't fit.
Because it's comfortable, it's familiar, it's what they know how to do.
Yeah.
This rigid adherence to comfortable processes, even when it's clearly counterproductive for the chosen strategies, is a massive barrier. It's like buying the right kind of paint for the job, but then insisting on using completely the wrong kind of brush because it feels more familiar in your hand. Hashtag outro quartet.
Okay, wow. That's a lot to take in, but incredibly insightful. So let's try to wrap this up. What does this all mean for you, our listener, as you try to navigate your world, whether it's business or something else?
I think the core takeaway is this. In today's complex, rapidly evolving landscape, there is simply no single best strategy anymore. That idea is gone.
Right. No silver bullet.
No silver bullet. Success hinges entirely on your ability, first, to accurately understand your specific environment, assessing its predictability, its malleability, its harshness, and then choosing the right approach, the right color from that strategy palette we've discussed.
Whether that's the methodical, optimized classical,
Or the agile, rapidly iterating adaptive.
the bold, future-creating visionary,
The collaborative, ecosystem-building shaping.
or the stabilizing, transformative renewal when times get tough.
Exactly. And for large, diverse companies, the pinnacle is mastering ambidexterity, running and transforming on those parallel tracks, applying multiple approaches simultaneously and skillfully across different parts of the business.
And this isn't just an interesting academic theory, right? This is practical.
Absolutely practical. It's crucial for survival and for sustained growth in the modern world. This fundamental shift in thinking from seeking a singular, fixed strategy to embracing a dynamic, multifaceted, context-dependent one is perhaps the most important strategic insight for leaders today. It's about empowering yourself with a much fuller, richer strategic toolkit.
So a final thought for you, the listener, to maybe chew on after this deep dive. As you reflect on your own challenges, maybe in your professional life, leading a team, running a business, or even thinking about major personal endeavors, ask yourself this.
Mhm.
What color from the strategy palette is truly appropriate for the situation you're facing right now? Are you perhaps unconsciously applying a classical, detailed 5-year plan to what is actually an adaptive problem, one that really requires rapid experimentation and iteration?
Or maybe trying to use a bold, lone visionary approach when the environment actually calls for a collaborative shaping strategy where success depends on orchestrating an entire ecosystem of partners.
Right, think about it. How might just a small conscious shift in your strategic color choice, choosing the right approach for the real context, open up entirely new possibilities, and maybe help you paint a much more successful picture for your future?